to have to remove the tree I was working on. So there, there you have divine comedy. But anyways, um, one of the interesting things that has been a part of this journey is seeing in new and fresh ways kind of how the body, my body, is just kind of doing its own thing. Um, and Well, anyways, I'm going to tell a story. So I was at my amazing surgeon's office about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks out from the actual injury. And I went there to check my wound, which was, healing in a little bit of a weird way. It still is. Um, and so I have these things that are, looking at my leg is, kind of interesting. It's not the same leg I left home with that day. It's got big incisions in it, and it's a lot skinnier. And seems like it's sort of out to the side a little bit more than I remembered it. But anyway, so most of the time I have a little sleeve on my leg, and I kind of don't see all the mess. Um, but anyway, so there I was. I was in his office and in the room where he was seeing me, and my little sleeve was pulled off, so I got to see all the details. And I was in a wheelchair, and I was bent over, and he reached down, and one of the things that's been remaining, I mean, there's still a bunch of them on my leg. There's incisions on one side and the other are these things. They're called steri strips, and they're just little pieces. They look kind of like the reinforced tape with um, pieces of thread or fiber in it, so it doesn't rip very easily. It looks like that, and they go across the incision and sort of hold it together. And he did the kind of sutures or stitches that end up dissolving in your body. And so, but these steri strips are left, kind of running across the wound, spaced about a quarter to a half an inch apart, and they're each of them about an inch and a half long, and about 3/4 of it, or half an inch wide, something like that. Anyways, so he just these things have been on me, and he all of a sudden reached down and he just took one and he lifted it, and it came up off of my leg, and underneath of it was stuff that was kind of like, what is that mush? And so I was looking at that, and then he pulled off another one, and then another and another, and it was like, oh, but I mean, the steri strips had almost at some level become a part of my body. And in a way, I could feel the registering inside of a little bit of panic. um, and yet, that all came up, and like, okay, feel your butt on the wheelchair, and all right, and all that. And I thought, okay, so just making space and feeling the space and letting the energy of kind of the shock of the moment move out. And then and we were talking and just talking normally and civilly. And then I went from leaning over and looking at the wound to sitting up in my chair. And lo and behold, I was all of a sudden, I could barely breathe. There was a lot of pressure in my diaphragm area. I felt incredibly lightheaded. He looked at me and said, "Oh my God, you have, you're pale as a sheet." I guess the blood had drained out of my face, and I was barely able to slur the words, "I think I'm going to faint." and I didn't, and I put my arm out on, there was a exam table next to me. I put my arm out on the exam table, and I was just I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. This was completely out of the realm of, you know, any familiarity whatsoever. So I'm just kind of disoriented and all of this. And he didn't seem, phased or moved at all. Um, Eventually, it settled down just a little bit, and he was able to help me. He had to physically grab me, and he was able to help me out of the wheelchair, which I was in danger of falling out of the wheelchair itself. That's kind of hard to do. But he got me into a recliner that was there in the room. And then I could really, and he left for about 15 minutes. And I was just, as I was sitting there in the recliner, there was a part of me that was just so fascinated by what had happened. I mean, this was like, wow, this was the body just totally doing its own thing. Nothing I had any context or history for. And somehow it brought up a quote for me that I've always really did. So, Spirit Rock is a meditation retreat center in the San Francisco Bay Area, out in beautiful nature out in Marin. And I've done a lot of long, 1 and 2 month long retreats down there. And we're associated with them. John's a senior teacher for them, and uh, anyways, when one of the places that I like a lot when I go on retreat there is they have a little octagonal hut. It's maybe 10 or 12 feet in diameter, and it's called the Katanyuta, or the Gratitude Hut. And it's got pictures of all of the exemplars and teachers of a lot of the teachers that teach at Spirit Rock. And so, and then it has some of their most beloved quotes that are in there. And one of the pictures is of this very austere, sort of frightening looking, you know, wraithfully thin guy with very intense eyes. And his name is Ajahn Mun. And he's reputed to be a completely and fully awakened being, an arhat. He was the teacher to Ajahn Chah, who was a teacher to John Travis and Jack Kornfield, and a lot of the teachers of Spirit Rock. Anyway, so I'm sitting in the recliner, and I was reminded of this quote from Ajahn Mun. And it goes, "In your investigation of the world, never allow the heart mind to desert the body. Examine its nature. See the elements that comprise it." And by that, he means the elements of space, fire, air, water, uh, earth. Um, this is the direct lived experiential body that we have. Examine its nature, see the elements that comprise it. And then he interjects the word kindly. It'd be nice if we reflexively did that. But kindly see the impermanence, the suffering, the selflessness of the body while sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. Then its true nature is seen fully and lucidly by the heart mind, and the wonders of the world become clear. And so I love that aspect of, you know, kindly see the impermanence, the suffering, the selflessness. And when I first encountered that quote and I thought of the selflessness, I thought, oh, like selfless service, like, the way that my body supports me without asking anything. But then as that had prior to sitting on the recliner, it was like, oh, wait, the selflessness, the, it's the fact that the body, there isn't some core, integral, defining control tower for the body. When I came to practice, I kind of felt like I remember being, guided by teachers to feel sensations in my body. And the way that I would feel sensations is that I kind of would look down from behind my eyes. I would look into my body to look and see the sensations, to be able to feel them. So, I kind of had some sense of a control center. Um, but actually, as practice continued, to feel how that sense of the body is like, oh, wait, it's just this interplay at the experiential level of elements. And then, there's the way that the body registers pain and pleasure, liking and disliking, reactivity, uh, the way that um, it's just operating, kind of in its own, by its own laws. And sometimes those laws are things that we can, through the amazing gifts of science and medicine. Like, I've been having an issue with my incisions. The incisions are all healed up and they're fine from the outside, but there's still some stuff going on the inside. If I didn't have antibiotics, I might be losing my leg. You know. So there's another. So this another word for selflessness is, or not self, is ungovernability. And there is a certain, at the end of the day, no matter what we do, we're ultimately, this is a one-way ticket. Reflecting on that can be either a cause for a sense of doom or a cause for a sense of preciousness, a sense of inspiration to connect with each moment of experience. When the Buddha was asked, is there a self or is there no self? He would oftentimes not say anything in response to that question, because if he said there is a self, then that would affirm, some essential soul or Atman, and if he said there's no self, then that would sort of affirm a nihilism and be inaccurate. What he really was teaching was actually neither no self nor self. So he's teaching not self, that things are just as they are. It's just this. It's the suchness of the moment. Um, and when our bodies act in a way, we get inured, inured to the breath that we take, or do we take the breath, or does it take us? Are we breathing, or are we being breathed? It's a matter of perspective. So, but that moment of that, what was happening for me, I found out later. There's a term for it. Imagine that. This was a vasovagal response, and it's there's a subconscious nervous system that is constantly it's operating our organs and a lot of internal processes that if we had to consciously operate them would quickly overwhelm us. But it's not only operating our sort of plumbing, it's also constantly in every moment scanning our internal and external environment for threat or for safety. And so I had, in a way that had never happened before in my life, I had tripped this subconscious, thing. Marcia, you may want to mute yourself. Um, I had tripped this wire. And so a process happened that was outside of any conscious control, outside of any self or will or intention. It just did itself. It was ungovernable. It was not subject to an essential control tower. There was nobody behind the curtain. And so it was just such a interesting moment of like being reminded again, because it's so easy to get into a complacency, a familiarity, a taking for granted, an inurement that yeah, this is me, this is mine, I, me, my. And then when we have that rude shock, um, there's another thing that's been going on, and that is, they had to make these big incisions, and of course, I guess you've got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So, with these incisions and getting in there to do the put in a plate and 15 screws and God knows what else the surgeon did. Of course, a lot of nerves were severed. And amazingly, they regrow. I didn't know that. But all because I thought a severed nerve, and then you're kind of done there, and that's how you become a paraplegic or quadriplegic or whatever. But anyways, these are subcutaneous nerves. They're under the skin nerves, and a bunch of them got cut. So there was this one evening I had gotten to the rehab center, and I had just learned that day how to be able to lie on my side. First time in 10 days, I was able to lie on my side, and I'm a side sleeper. So there I was at the end of the day, done all my physical therapy, done all my, I've been a good boy, and I was tired. It takes a lot of energy for the body to heal up after this stuff. And I was positioning myself on my side and just getting that. And I reached down, and my hand happened to touch my lower shin. And I didn't feel anything. I mean, it was completely and totally and 100% just numb. And then I was feeling around, and it wasn't numb in just, one little spot. It was numb all over. So I immediately called in I rang the bell, and the certified nursing assistant came in, and I said, well, my leg is numb. And she said, well, that's not good. Of course, inside I was like, oh my God, gangrene is set in, and just all of the chorus started, the Greek tragic chorus. began wailing away. And, I texted my surgeon and several other people. And, I came to find out that it was shocking. I came to find out though that it's a normal thing and to be expected, and no big whoop. And now at closing in, I'm 5.5 weeks away from the accident. Some of those nerves are starting to regrow. I'm starting to get subcutaneous sensation back in my lower shin, and it's just such a trip to watch this. But it's so amazing to see the selflessness, the fact that the body's marching to its own tune. Um, so on the one hand, there's this extraordinary opportunity to connect to my, this like wondrous show of my body, and frightening show of my body doing things that I'm not used to it doing. On the other side, there's a body that needs to be cared for, and a kind of a all the parts that make up the sense of the continuum called Bruce. Um, there's a body and a heart and reactivity and the humanity that has to be held with all of that. So, one of the things that has been so profound in this experience has been how, intimate and alive, how vibrant, how nourishing this growing connection, and or not connection is not the word, this growing acknowledgement and felt sense of the aliveness of the element of space itself actually is. That has become, it's not some cold, indifferent openness and stillness. There is a real sense of the inclusiveness of it, the fact that it does not that it doesn't judge, it doesn't interpret, it simply includes just as it is. And this practice of connecting with the objects and then shifting, transitioning, and connecting with the openness, with the felt sense of space, it totally bypasses my conceptual thinking mind. And I can feel it just kind of go right. I can feel my eyes shifting in their focus. I can feel a sense of settling, a sense of nourishment. I love doing this too, just stroking my heart. This actually, stimulates that vagal nervous system and releases the very nourishing hormone oxytocin, um, and just helps, to support us in the moment. So it's been interesting that checking into the sense of the space hasn't been some kind of a a bypassing, but in a way, an opportunity to hold more intimately what's happening. I just want to, Rita is playing around. This came up on an old article from the Lion's Roar. Let's see if I get this. In inclining towards awareness, the heart is released. This is by Ajahn Amaro. It appeared in Lion's Roar about 11 years ago. Um, in inclining toward awareness and space, the heart is released. In a way, it is like looking at a picture. Normally, the attention goes to the figure in a picture and not the background. Or imagine being in a room with someone who is sitting in a chair. When you look across the room, you would probably not attend to the space in front of or beside that person. Your attention would go to the figure in the chair, right? Similarly, if you've ever painted a picture or a wall, there's usually one spot where there's a glitch or a smudge. So, where does the eye go when you look at the wall? It beams straight in on the flaw. In exactly the same way, our perceptual systems are geared to aim for the figure, not the context. Um, and then this gesture of attending to awareness in space is thus a core spiritual practice, but not a complicated one. We simply withdraw our attention from the objects of the mind and incline the attention towards the awareness or space. This is not a massive reconstruction program. It's not like we have to do a whole lot. It's very simple and natural. We relax and notice that which has been here all along, like noticing the space in a room. We don't notice space because it doesn't grab our attention, it isn't exciting. Similarly, Nibbana has no feature, no color, no taste, and no form, so we don't realize it's right here. The perceptual systems and the naming activity of the mind work on forms. That's where they go first. Therefore, we tend to miss what's actually here. And then he says something with which I not take issue, but I realize there's an opportunity. Actually, because it has no living quality to it, space is the worst as well as the best example. But sometimes it is reasonable to use it. And here I've been going on and on about space. But the thing about space is that when we feel into it, we begin to feel the actual aliveness of it. When we sense into it, our attention imbues it. When we sense that field inside and out, and if we have the perceptual simplicity to feel that as, oh, that's just, it's a field of openness and stillness that doesn't really necessarily have a boundary. The sense of distance when our eyes are closed isn't that relevant. Inside, outside, they aren't that relevant. It just encompasses everything. So, it collapses duality. So when we can feel into that space, it actually becomes alive. It becomes that space is an element. I can feel that my head is above my hips. I can feel I have a sense of distance between my chin and my hips. We live our lives in space. We are spatial beings at the relative level. Space is a fundamental core aspect of our lives, of our aliveness. And it's right there to be connected with. Uh, and when we do, it imparts the gifts of, well, yeah, it's normal, it's ordinary, it's regular, it's everyday, uh, it's obvious, and yet it's also unlimited. It's ever present, and it's unconditionally inclusive, non judgmental, unharmable, unstainable, you know, everything you could attribute to awareness itself. If we are cognizant of that field of space then has the knowing quality. And so now, we have, oh, cool. So I can be in touch with this field of space and actually the presence of nibbana and peace, okayness at the same time, and that I'm in the, that there is a really raw, deep engagement with the fragility, the tenderness, the rawness, the ruggedness of our humanity. And it's that intimacy that, all of this is arising. We can feel that the way in which the space permeates, that all of this stuff is actually arising out of the space, dissolving back into it. Everything else is moving. Does space move? Our experience of it might. So I think that, for me, one of the gifts of this healing journey and this process has been um, affirmational. It has deepened that sense of living connection to something which I know initially in my practice felt it didn't feel as human. I guess that this sense of space is beginning to feel more and more innately human. Um, and hey, universe, I don't know if I need to break another leg to feel that even more deeply. Uh, I'll take a different form of practice, but anyways, I think that's enough. I'm wondering if anybody has any. I guess that there's some kind of a wrapping it up statement I'd like to make, and that's just simply that we explore new frontiers, but and they're kind of frontiers of simplicity and freshness and innocence at the end of the day, right? It's the same old stuff. We're just less there's less of a constructed sense in the exploration, maybe. And so we see these things of, oh, the selflessness of the body. And then I see, the part of me that gets overwhelmed or sad or feels loss or feels grief. But that this understanding of Dharma, the way things are, it's including all of it. It's including all of our familiar sense of ourselves. It's including the new ways that open up for us to sense ourselves, our world, each other, the absolute, the glimpses of the absolute that open for us, ways in which that deepens. Selflessness, it can be scary when we get into unfamiliarity. There can be a sense of fear. But as we continue, if we just keep going and we come into contact with frontiers, horizons in our practice, if we're willing to be authentic and fresh with them, they ultimately, they and our humanity, they and our naturalness, our ordinariness, uh, begin to merge, integrate, and there's a lot of freedom in that. So that's what I've got to say. Does anybody have a burning question before we're going to do a? Jen just has a couple of announcements tonight. I'm going to end with a short metta. I didn't leave a lot of time for questions and answers, but if anybody's got a quick one, any raised hands out there?
Bruce, I'd just like to say that I was so impressed with what grace you brought to your experience in the 4 days that I took care of you at home. I
Oh,
think it's a testament to the depth of your practice.
well, thank you so much, Gabrielle. I appreciate that, and certainly a testament to the depth of yours to actually come up here with me. And remember that Friday morning? Wow, that was not an easy morning, was it?
No, it wasn't.
I
But
had,
you got
I, yes.
you got yourself through it.
I don't know. I think you got me part of the way through it, and I mean, there was some grace there, and then things opened up. I'll tell you, that Bengay and the pepper cream together. I mean, one and then the other. That is solid gold. So, just to clue everybody in, and this is really such an expression of sangha, of community, and that is so Gabrielle actually has experience from having been a nurse, and she was kind enough to pick me up at my rehab center and drive me home and get all kinds of groceries and food and everything. And she was with me for 3 days, and then did all my pills and and just her presence was an extraordinary gift of her, her confidence and her familiarity with the realm that I was in. And it was a big deal to have come home. I actually had my land partner came up today, and they had seen me the day that I arrived. And then today was the first time they'd seen me again. They were like, wow, you look better today. Boy, that day you arrived, you sure were pale. I was like, well, I was kind of, there was someone was in the kitchen with Dinah. There was that was a lot of change to accommodate in a short period of time. But now I'm home and it's great. So anyway, but just and I want to say how meaningful Sangha has been during this whole process. The outreach from people, the calls and cards and flowers and the people that have brought food and just come and hung out with me and all of that. It just, there's vitamin L, vitamin love, is such a huge part of this. So thank you all very much for that. So let me do a quick meta, and then we'll take it from there. Anyways, just closing your eyes and just now see if you feel that sense of space inside and out, and just notice what you sense in your heart space. You know, the space just includes that. There's this reactive, emotional heart. It opens and it closes. And then there's the heart of the heart, which is really the space itself out of which this emotional heart arises. And it just holds this heart, this humanity. No judging, no resistance, no amplifying, no diminishing. Can we feel this sense of peace can we include all of ourselves? This open, still peacefulness that knows, that receives our lives. That's alive and a basic part of our humanity. Just like our tenderness and our fragility are basic parts of our humanity, so too is this unlimited, unconditional aspect of ourselves. And if we can include ourselves, we can include each other and recognize that this space holds all of us. This is the same open stillness that the Buddha found that allowed him to withstand the armies of Mara and the temptations and the doubt. This is the same open stillness that the Dalai Lama feels, that our awakened masters have recognized and felt. And if we can include each other in our Sangha, can we include everyone, everything, every animal, every sentient being, all beings everywhere? And if there's been any merit or good energy that we've generated here together today, that we share that with all that is, openly, without distinction, with this very simple wish that all beings everywhere might be truly, truly happy. So thank you all so much for your attention and your practice, and please give Jen your attention